And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. The caribou is the only member of the deer family where both males and females grow antlers. The antlers of the female are smaller than those of the male, but are carried for a longer period of time. The male caribou shed their antlers in November or December after mating. Females will often carry theirs until June after they have given birth to help them defend the food sources while nursing their calves. On today's Open Connection, we open our archives to bring you this story about caribou wrestling.
Hey Rich, we're going to be working north of where we were on that last one instead of south. Okay, check work. Yeah, check you working a little north. A couple miles, that thing up? About 6. Okay, check.
It's a few hundred kilometers northeast of Prince George, and it's halfway through a day of high country rodeo. The animal they're after is woodland caribou. The would-be cowboy is biologist and net gun specialist Rob Woods of Fort St. John.
It's a lot of fun for me. It's enjoyable. You get to see new country and work with new people, and you always learn things from other people too. So,
helping repack the net is helicopter pilot Bob Batchelor and Maury Wood, the wildlife biologist in charge of the Williston Wildlife Project.
We don't know a lot about the populations of caribou up here in the Williston watershed, so this is the first study, the first step that's being taken to gain some information about their migration patterns, their habitat use and selection, and what seasons they use, what types of habitat in. So this is the beginning for us up in this watershed.
They're high in the Wolverine Range, and they're getting ready to capture another caribou. The objective is to net the animal, wrestle it to the ground, and place a radio transmitter around its neck. Armed with his net gun, Rob Woods heads off with his pilot. They must work as a team in order to reduce the stress on the animal and on the two men trying to capture it.
Okay, here we go. Yep, going in. Okay, it'll be next patch of snow. Okay, guy. Yeah, I'm cocked, ready anytime. Okay, yeah. Which one? On the left? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, let's move in. How's she doing, Bob? She's just on her head. We'll have to re-net her. Okay, I'll actually, if we can get her foot cut, we'll be okay. Okay, I'll get ready to get on her, okay? She's down. Let's see if we can do it. Okay. Yep. She's back up. She's got her one foot cut. I think. Okay, get me right over top of her.
And as the caribou fights to free itself from the net, Rob works quickly to ensure the cow doesn't get away. He steps off the helicopter and goes to work wrestling the 3-year-old animal to the ground. With Maury Wood and biologist Chris Ritchie on their way to help, the task is accomplished without too many bruises to Rob or the caribou.
it does get a little rough, but in all the years, only a few bruises, no cuts, no major breaks or anything, just bruises. So I think it's fair on the animals and fair on us too. So
try one more. See what's there.
To ensure no one gets hurt, Rob requests that I take a hands-on approach to this story. Assigned to hold the head, I feel the strength, smell the breath, and see the blood sample.
We take two different kinds of blood samples. From the females, we take one that we analyze for pregnancy so that we can find out whether they will be calving or not. And the other blood sample is for genetic analysis, DNA analysis. That gets sent down to Victoria, and they will later analyze that, compare it to other populations of caribou throughout North America, and that's where they're looking at subspecies and that sort of thing.
Once the collar is fitted and the blood's taken, the animal is released. After 10 or so minutes, the episode is over, and the animal returns to the wild, tired and puzzled, but otherwise okay.
we were doing some work back over towards Fort St. John and comparing between other methods of capture for deer, and we found that net gun was cheaper and quicker and more selective, which surprised us.
How about for the animal?
How about for the animal? Our losses with the net gun are very, very minimal. Other forms of capture like drop net, we've never had much problem. Clover traps, we lose the odd one, but it sure beats the drugs, hands down, for animals that you can handle.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thanks for staying with us. Caribou movements are probably triggered by changing weather conditions such as the onset of cold weather or snowstorms. Once they decide to migrate, caribou can travel up to 50 miles a day. Caribou apparently have a built-in compass like migratory birds and can travel through areas that are unfamiliar to them to reach their calving grounds. Let us return to the archives to see net gun specialist Rob Woods in action.
Ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Okay, just ease up a bit.
Okay, which one we going for? This one right here?
Okay, I'm just gonna wait. Okay, take one of these hammered ones. Okay.
Careful, it's a cornice.
Yeah, sorry, Bob, I was waiting for that.
Yeah, I did.
Well, what's the animal doing?
What the animal is doing is trying to free itself, and in the process it slides over an edge and comes to rest a few hundred meters below. We are left only to watch as Rob once again repeats what he's done hundreds of times before. From the hovering helicopter, he jumps to the ground and brings the animal under control.
The more you work with one pilot, the better it is, and you know, the communication thing has to be there. We're always trying to communicate, talk to each other, inform each other what's going on, choose which animal. It makes it a lot easier for everybody because you're not second-guessing each other as you're going in on an animal. You know, you don't want those decisions made or the second-guessing going on as you move in on an animal.
While this exercise deals only with woodland caribou, it's part of a bigger program to protect and enhance fish and wildlife affected by the Bennett and Peace River dams, a program sustained by an $11 million contribution by BC Hydro. The dams resulted in the Williston Reservoir, which stretches close to 200 kilometers along the Rocky Mountain Trench. By radio collaring caribou, data can be collected which will be used to ensure the animal's future.
This information, once we gain some more of it, say in another 2 or 3 years down the road, hopefully we can use some of that to work together with some of the forestry companies and other things that are going on in the watershed, and look at some integrated management solutions, working together with them.
Staying up pretty good, eh?
Yeah, almost too good a shot. Okay, you just got a bit of net on the toe there. Okay, can you?
Each of the radio collars transmits on a different frequency, and the caribou can be tracked for up to 3 years. The majority of the 21 now collared are females, which will allow biologists to locate where they are calving. It's all crucial information if woodland caribou is to be protected from the ever-increasing demand for lumber and hydropower that now encroaches on its habitat.
Okay, Murray, depart. Got the blindfold off? No. Okay. Go on, girl.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. If you're new to exercise or looking for a form of physical fitness that is easier on your body and benefits your mind, you might be wondering if Tai Chi is right for you. Otherwise known as meditation in motion, Tai Chi is an ancient Chinese tradition based in martial arts that is now a popular low-impact exercise method involving slow movements and breath. Let us return to the archives to learn from a Grand Master.
Canada's top Tai Chi instructor was in Terrace to conduct a workshop on the ancient Chinese art. He was assisted by Francis Zhen, one of his students. Grandmaster Chong Ta-Chen grew up with Tai Chi. His uncles and grandfather knew it, and it was taught to him in the army. He started learning Tai Chi at age 7. He's now 78 and has been teaching for 40 years. He says to become a Grand Master is a very individual process and depends on a person's dedication.
For the average person, if they have a good teacher, it'll take them about 3 or 4 years to be really proficient in it. But to be a Grand Master, it's an individual case. It's how much dedication you put into it, it's how much time you put into it, it's how much the philosophy and the background you understand of it.
用1年的时间，太极拳的基础就打稳的了，师傅好好的教，然后呢，自己的这个功夫的深浅呢，就是自己要花时间下去了。
Your basic forms, your basic structure can be taught to you by a good teacher in about a year. But the real skill in Tai Chi, you have to spend a lot of your own time practicing to be able to attain any level of proficiency.
So, Grand Master then, is that almost like a name for a level or?
师父这个名字是不是讲最高等的老师？
不是，师傅是对学生称的，师傅是学生。Chinese 的这个习惯性呢，就是教你的功夫的人呢，就是师傅，就是又是老师这个地位跟自己的父亲一样。中国讲从事一天呢，就是好像就是跟父亲一样的这种的。
The title Sifu is translated into from Chinese as teacher. The Grandmaster is just a title people have confer on certain people, certain teachers who show exceptional skills in teaching. It's not like a 9th degree black belt or 3rd degree black belt. It's not that sort of level. It's the ability to teach. It's the ability to disseminate the information.
So Tai Chi.
怎么说呢？因为中国是一个礼教的国家，一个伦理的国家，它是特别讲究这个。真实中道，他所以讲就一日为师，终身为父。你一天当了我老师了，好像终身我终身里头好像我父亲一样，这样的。
The word 师父, 师 means teacher, 父 is father. Traditionally, when you acquire or when you commit yourself to a teacher, you view that teacher as your parent. So that's the title, and I would presume I'm not culturally attuned enough to know this, but I think Grandmaster perhaps pertain to grandfather as well, and the grand teacher as in the older teacher, a good teacher.
Chong Ta-Chen has taught Tai Chi in Taiwan, South Africa, the U.S., and in Vancouver. He is the president of the Chinese Tai Chi Chuan Association of Canada. This graceful art started in the Sung and Ming dynasties in China about 1,000 years ago. It combines concentration and calmness of the mind and breathing with slow, graceful movements to capture a balanced state of body and mind. Tai Chi can be classified as the most spiritual form of martial arts and the original form.
That's true. Plus the Japanese style and the Korean style are all learned from the Chinese as well. So it's transitioned from the Chinese into the Japanese and then Chinese into Korean as well.
Yeah, 因为 Japanese 同 Korea 有 many Chinese people. Korea 很多中国人，通通是有功夫的。
There are a lot of Chinese in Korea who have martial arts skills.
Yeah. 日本的功夫从中国有琉球的人到中国去学回来了，他自己把名字改掉了。柔道就是中国的摔跤，呀，卡蒂这些是中国的少年的功夫。
The native Japanese are called the I'm not sure how you pronounce this. Neinu, I think it's like the Aborigines of Japan. They went to China and they learned it, and they just changed the names. The judo is basically Chinese, and the karate is basically Chinese. It's called Shaolin style.
Anybody, no matter what their fitness level, can start learning Tai Chi. Peter Dixon, who gained his teaching status in 1986, is a student of Chong Ta-Chen. Dixon teaches Tai Chi classes in Terrace and Kitimat. Chong Ta-Chen says advancement in the art depends on the individual and how committed they are.
Some people are naturally attracted to activities, to physical activity, so it's going to take them a shorter time to really master Tai Chi. For some who are slower, who don't have affinity to physical activities, then it's going to take them a longer time. So it's a very personal, very subjective answer.
总而言之，练太极拳就是要有恒心。你没有恒心呢，你就最聪明的你学会了也没得用。要有恒心，天天把它当做把练太极拳当做日常的生活的一部分，跟吃饭睡觉一样，你就得到很多的好处。
Ultimately, you have to make Tai Chi a part of your daily activities. It has to be a part of a portion of the day where you have to set aside for sleeping and eating and washing up, whatnot. You have to set aside a portion for Tai Chi as well to be able to learn it in its truest form.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Orcas are apex predators at the top of the food chain. Orcas use many different techniques to catch prey. Sometimes they beach themselves to catch seals on land, jumping from water onto land. Orcas can also work together to catch larger prey or groups of prey such as schools of fish. In this final segment of Open Connection, let us return to the archives as the Prince Rupert Museum prepares for a new display.
The museum in northern BC will soon be sporting a new display. Last year, a 19-foot-long killer whale was found washed up 25 miles northwest of Prince Rupert on Dundas Island. Thanks to the Coast Guard, the museum was able to get the whale moved to Digby Island. Curator Robin Weber says the museum is fortunate to get the whale before nature did.
Well, the idea eventually is to take the cleaned whale skeleton and to have it articulated or reassembled and then mounted as a display in the museum. So what we're looking at doing today is assembling all of the pieces, collecting the small pieces that may disappear into the water once we sink it or when we're flying it from this location on Digby Island over to Seal Cove. So we're assembling all the small pieces and taking them off the skeleton, and we'll be taking the larger pieces, wrapping them in some webbing, some seine net, and then putting that down on a cargo net, and the Coast Guard will come over and fly it from here over to Seal Cove for us. It's trying to locate all of the pieces and make sure everything is there. Of course, it's been sitting here decaying for about a year, so it's a little bit ripe, but not so unpleasant that we can sit there and work on it. And then we're trying to remove all of the larger pieces that are still remaining. Sinking it in the water will accomplish a couple of things. One is that, as with most marine mammals, the whale skeleton is very porous. And so that means that a lot of the animal's oils seep into the skeleton. And for museums, that's a real nemesis because the oil will continue to leach out of the skeleton years after it's been placed in the museum, and it goes rancid and creates all kinds of problems. So sinking it in the water will float the oil out of the skeleton, and it will also give it access to all of the little marine scavenger organisms that will help clean up the remaining pieces of cartilage and dried flesh that are still clinging to the skeleton.
Killer whale pods are regular visitors up and down the BC coast, making it hard to know much of the whale's history.
The whale was originally found washed up on a beach on the east side of Dundas Island to the northwest of Prince Rupert. It was Ken Green with Federal Fisheries who originally found it. And George Watson, who's on our board, flew some of our staff up to take a look at it. Later we had a biologist by the name of Bill McClelland, who came up, and Coast Guard flew a crew out to help remove most of the fleshy parts from the skeleton, and then fly the remaining skeleton here to this location on Digby Island, and that all happened a little over a year ago. And so the purpose of leaving it out exposed more or less to the elements was to speed up the decay process to the point where it is today.
Robin and his staff were, to say the least, happy of the whale's arrival at Seal Cove.
That's right, yeah, we've basically cleaned most of what's left of the killer whale from the skeleton, and we've flown it over now from Digby over to Seal Cove here. We have to sink it in water for a while, which will help to remove whatever other little bits are still left on the skeleton. The marine life will do a good job of that, and also that'll help float some of the oil that remains in the porous bones. And later on, after we've had it in the water for a while, we'll pull it up and have someone come up and assemble the skeleton for display in the museum.
As with any project, no matter how big or small, volunteers make it happen. Weber says many people have contributed to this project.
Yes, and we had the net that it's in, we have a cargo net around the outside, but there's a fish net a fellow named Greg Olofsson put together and brought a net over for us at the museum, and he helped us out with the project. And we've had some assistance in the past with the airport allowing us to put it down on the ground over in Digby Island, and so we've had quite a bit of cooperation from a whole bunch of agencies with getting this project going.
Very few museums in the province, not to mention the world, can boast about having a killer whale on display. Weber says the Museum of Northern BC is truly fortunate.
That's right. Full whale skeletons are pretty hard to come by, and this is unusual in that it was washed up on the beach, so we had it right from the beginning. We were able to make sure that all the parts were there. Most of the small parts, like teeth and things like that, we've taken off the skeleton before it got to this stage, because the transport and sinking in the water, it's liable that we'd lose a few of them, so we've tried to keep track of those and keep them separate from the rest of the skeleton.
Does this skeleton have a name yet?
We haven't named it, but maybe there's a possibility for a museum contest of the future.
And just how soon will it be before the whale will open for viewing at the museum? Weber says it should be ready by the fall.
Well, the sinking the whale will probably be leaving it under the water for 3 to 4 months to complete the cleaning process, and we'll have to decide when funds might be available to bring someone up to work on it. There is a fellow near Nanaimo, British Columbia, Gary Stoneley, who's done a number of whale reconstructions for museums, and he'll be sending us a quote as to how much it would cost us to have it reassembled and displayed in the museum. It'll be a real eye-catcher. The museum's mandate does include natural history, although to this point most of the displays that we've had in the museum to this point have been of a historical or archaeological, and certainly a lot of the Northwest Coast First Nations material that's local to this area, particularly Tsimshian material.
If you would like more information on the whale, or if you would like to give it a name, write to the Museum of Northern British Columbia, 100 First Avenue East, Prince Rupert.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind to his heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.